Water is an important thing for all of us. On the trail, we need to store and carry it with us because it's not always available. Have you been wondering what storage method might actually work best for you? In this video, we will go over the most common methods backpackers use to store their water out on the trail. Stay tuned, this is part of a video series full of things you'll want to know for your first few hundred miles. Hey, Escape here. Here at Escape in the Office, I bring you along on my adventures and we go over gear, tips, and tricks. All things to make your next escape from your office more enjoyable. If you're new here and you enjoy what you see as you're watching the video, please do hit that subscribe button. Let's step into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to go over is water bottles, which is the most common thing to use out on the trail. Now, I'm going to divide this up a little bit because there are actually two different styles, and the first one is reusable bottles and the second is disposable bottles. So we'll go over reusables first. All right, so the first of the reusables is actually sports water bottles, and I would just say never ever take these out. The first problem is these can't adapt to anything. Filters can screw onto a lot of water bottles, but they can't screw onto these. The second thing is this is actually quite heavy when it's empty. It weighs the most out of all the options. And the third reason I would say never to use these is because these drink spouts and the drink tubes, if it gets cold at all, they can freeze. And when they freeze, they're very hard to thaw out there on the trail because you got to find a way to tear it apart and warm it up. So I would just say avoid these altogether. The second option of the reusable water bottles is actually the most popular one out on the trail, and that is the Nalgene bottle. So in recent years, people have actually been straying away from using them because they are heavy. However, if you're going out there when it's freezing, then it still is a good option, and that's because of the very large opening it has here. It helps prevent it from freezing. And another good thing about when you're taking this out there when it's cold is you can actually pour boiling water in this and tighten it down real tight and then shove it in your sleeping bag, and it helps keep you warm. So it still is a good option. However, I would recommend that if it's warm out, I would avoid using this one as well. Moving away from the reusables, we go into the disposables, and the most common is the Smart Water bottle or the Life Water bottle. Now, the great thing about these is that the Sawyer water filter uses the same threads that is on this Smart Water bottle. So if you don't have any other option, you can just scoop up your water and screw it on. Now, one of the bad things about these is that they are prone to freezing. So if it gets cold, your opening will freeze. However, if you get the smaller size, so this is the 1 liter, so if you get the next step down, it comes with a drink cap similar to this. Now, if you can't find one of those, say the gas station you go to buy these only has the 1 liter, look for a Propel bottle, because the Propel bottle, this is what this comes from, is actually the same threading. But what I would recommend is if you find a way to replace your drink cap with a Propel or a smaller size Smart Water bottle, keep your regular cap. All right, keeping the regular cap will come in handy, so just take it and throw it in your food bag. They weigh nothing, and just in case you lose this cap for any reason, you have a backup. So if you want a more robust option when you're going out there and you don't necessarily need to carry a Smart Water bottle because maybe you're just boiling or using chemicals to treat your water, then maybe taking a Gatorade bottle might be for you. They are more robust, they can take one heck of a beating, and they do have the large opening, which makes it easier to work with. Just keep in mind that the big 1 liter version of the bottles typically don't fit into the sides of the packs very easy, but if you look around, maybe at Walmart for those big 8-packs, you can find a taller version of these. All right, let's go over a few little tips that you can use while you're out there for using some water bottles. All right, and the first thing is boiling water. As I mentioned, Nalgene bottles can handle taking in boiling water. Gatorade bottles can handle hot water, but I wouldn't recommend putting boiling water in it. And if you're using a Smart Water or a Life Water bottle, I would let it cool down a lot before pouring it into the bottle. Now, a good way to tell if you took it too far is if you taste plastic when you go to drink the water, you went too hot. So a good thing to do is just test out at home. Boil some water, pour it in, or boil some water, let it cool down, pour it in, and then just do little tests at home. That way you know the limits. Maybe you have to let it cool down for 10 minutes, maybe 5's enough. So definitely do a few tests before you go out. All right, another useful tip that you can do when you're taking out your Smart Water bottle, or you can even do it with a Gatorade, is when you're at home, before you go out there, pour in a half a cup of water and then take a Sharpie and then just pour in a line. And then take another half cup, pour a line, and then just go all the way up. That way, if you don't want to use one of those collapsible cups or your pot doesn't have measuring markings on them, then you have a way to do that. All right, and as I mentioned, getting a drink cap can help you out a lot on the trail. And one great thing is if you need to flush your Sawyer while you're out there, say you went through some pretty nasty water, these nozzles actually fit around the front of the outspout of the filter, and you can back flush your filter using this. The last thing I will give you is that even though these are considered disposable, every bottle is reusable. You can wash it when you get home and keep using it for years. Just make sure you clean it right when you get home, let it fully dry, and then just fill it up before you leave. All right, so moving on away from bottles, we might need a good way to store large quantities of water. So say we got a few miles in between water sources, or you're done for the night, heading to camp, and you need some extra water for when you're in there and cooking and cleaning and doing what you need to do. The best way to do that is with water bladders. Now, the great thing is, like I said, they carry a lot of water. The most common size I've seen is 2 liters. One great thing is nowadays, most manufacturers are coming out with a cool little opening up top that allows for quick and easy scooping of the water to fill this bladder up. Another great thing about water bladders is that most manufacturers are actually taking the smaller end and making sure they are threaded for filters. And this makes things immensely easier, especially when you're using a very large bladder. The bags, which we will talk about here soon, that come with the Sawyer actually aren't that big. But instead of carrying multiple smaller bags, you can just carry one bigger one. So the last pro about water bladders is that the newer ones are being made with better materials and they can take one heck of a beating. You can actually put a lot of weight on them. This CNOC one is actually rated at 220 pounds, and that means that they will be less prone to popping and breaking, leaving you with a wet mess all over inside your pack if you have to put it in there. Moving on to a few cons with water bladders. Like I said, the most common size is 2 liter, but if you go any larger, it can get quite heavy to carry them. Another con with water bladders is that if you're using an older one or a cheaply made one, it will be prone to breaking or popping, so you do want to keep an eye out for that when you're shopping. And the last thing that I will mention about these water bladders is that those with the smaller holes, such as this old platypus that I used to use, these holes take ridiculously long to fill up out there on the trail. If you're somewhere where you don't have like a little waterfall or a pipe with some water running out of it, and all you have is a creek where you have to scoop it, it does take a long time to fill these up. So the newer system where they have the big opening is a huge change that is so much better. So definitely make sure you get one with the large opening on the as part of the kit. All right, so moving on from that water bladder, let's talk about a different style of water bladder that I used to actually quite love using, and that is the style with the line on it. Now, one of the great things about this is that you can put it in your pack, and then as long as you run it through, you can have the line coming over your shoulder, and it's just quick and easy access to drink. So that was one very good thing about it. Another great thing is instead of having off-centered water bottles, say you drank more from this one than you did your left one, then you're a little off balance. Well, this doesn't do that because it is balanced in the center of your back. And the other great thing about it is with the large opening on these are actually very easy to fill up. Now this one is an old one that I used when I was in the Army, and they're pretty much the same. The only thing that may have changed is the connectors. They may have put in some quick releases and things of that nature, but they're pretty much the same. Now going over a couple cons about this style of water bladder is that depending on the material of your backpack and how easy it is to get the heat from your back, it can heat up the water and make it taste pretty nasty. So this one was actually part of just a regular Camelback system, and using it, just doing some work, out there while I was in the Army, it would get quite hot and nasty. The second con with it being in your pack is that you actually can't see how much water is in there. So the advantage of using water bottles is you know exactly how much you have based on pulling it out, drinking it, going okay, and then putting it back. But these, you actually have to tear apart your pack and pull it out and take a look and see where the water level is. That is a huge downside. All right, another huge downside to using this style of bladder is that the drink line does need to be insulated. Whether it's hot or cold out, there should be some kind of insulation around it. The big downside is that you usually have to buy that separate. Another pain with dealing with this style of water bladder is if you decide to put an inline filter through the line, you might have to cut the line or buy a modification kit to fit the Sawyer water filter. And there are other brands where you can put that in, but it is a pain and you do have to remove the filter to back flush it. And if you're going with the filter on the line, you're gonna have to find a way to keep the filter under your clothing somehow when it's cold out, so that way the filter doesn't freeze, or just constantly sip from it to keep water moving to prevent freezing. The absolute biggest con of using this style of bladder is if the cap is even just a little bit loose, you're gonna get to camp with wet gear and no water. So it's definitely something to watch out for while you're out there on the trail. Okay, so a few tips about using water bladders. Remember how I mentioned with the water bottles to save that extra cap if you go buy a drink cap? Well, in the same vein, the threads are the same, so you can use that extra cap on the bladder if you absolutely need to. It is an absolute lifesaver. And like I mentioned, these CNOC ones can take one heck of a beating. They're rated to 220 pounds. If you get a different brand, do check the weight rating and try to stay below that. You know, don't put anything heavy on top of it. When it's full, you don't want it to pop while you're out on trail. In regards to the water bladder that comes with the Sawyer filter, don't use it. Okay, they've repeatedly gotten bad reviews. They're prone to breaking. They take an awfully long time to fill, and sometimes you can't even get it full all the way. Now, Sawyer is an amazing brand. They've done amazing things for not just the backpacking community, but for the world itself. But I think that they should just ditch the bladders and just partner up with CNOC or Evernew and just bundle their bladders with the filter to create the best backpacking water filter kit out there. Now, do you really need to carry a bladder out on the trail when you can just have your water bottles? Not necessarily, but I would still recommend carrying one. It doesn't have to be full. It's better to be prepared, so definitely if you're going on a shorter trip, just a weekend trip or just a week-long trip, then check the area and make sure you know where all the water sources are. If you're going out on somewhere like the AT, the CDT, or PCT, then definitely just carry one with you. You're gonna need it. All right, remember, it is better to be safe than sorry. But either way you look at it, while you're carrying all this water, you're gonna need a way to purify it. So if you go ahead and check out this video, I go over the different ways you can purify your water while you're out on the trail. If you found this video helpful, please do like, comment, subscribe, and then hit that little notification bell so that way YouTube does tell you when I upload the next video. I wanna thank you for watching, escape the office, and get outside.